I would love it if in some small way my story can inspire you to follow your dreams in life, and hopefully you can see the ripple effects of the decisions I've made, how they've guided my life path, and how your decisions can guide yours if you follow what you're passionate about in life. As you can see from the picture on the left, I've loved running since as long as I can remember. But actually my involvement in the sport stemmed from long before that picture was taken. After being born and before going home for the first time, my mum and dad took me via a local cross-country race to cheer on some of my dad's friends who were racing. And so from that you would guess that I was destined for a career in athletics, but I never felt pressured, and I was always encouraged to enjoy running by my dad Mel, who is a former international marathon runner. My dad is without a doubt one of my biggest inspirations. In 2006 he was diagnosed with myeloma, bone marrow cancer, and I'll never forget going to visit him in hospital for one of the first times as he was in the isolation ward. And as we walked up the corridor and we saw many of the other patients, understandably very tired from the treatment and hooked up to drips, we got to my dad's room and we heard this really funny noise, and my mum and I said, what on earth is he up to? And as we looked in the window of the room, we saw that he'd had an exercise bike installed into his room, and he was hammering away on this thing with sweat dripping off him. And I think back to that a lot during tough times in work and even during races if it becomes painful, and I think if my dad can deal with cancer in that way, I think I can deal with the pain of a cross-country race. Something my dad has always taught me as well is how important it is to help other people, even if it's something small like holding a door open for them. You may never get that chance again, and it's important to take that opportunity when it arises. In 2009, I was given the opportunity to be a pacemaker for two Kenyan athletes, Gideon Gathimba on the right and second from the right, Bethwell Bergen. Now their goal that day for the opening of Aberdeen Sports Village was to try and run under 4 minutes for the mile for the first time in Aberdeen. When we had a meeting with the two Kenyans before the race, it became quickly apparent that I wasn't even going to be able to keep up with them until halfway to pacemake for them. And so in the end, I pacemake for the British athletes on the left-hand side. And these two guys, with the help of Ian Geary for the first lap, went on and ran 3 minutes and 57 seconds for the mile. And I think it was then that started my fascination with Kenyan athletics, and also how it was possible for humans to run quite that fast. Fast forward 2 years to 2011, I was working in a part-time job along with my friend Dan Mulhare, who's second from the right in the picture. And Dan said to me, how would you like to come to Kenya for 3 months training? And it took me all of about 60 seconds to say yes, and asked Dan to book the flight so that I couldn't talk myself out of it. And so off we went to Kenya for the 3 months, arriving to our accommodation, which was 2 single mattresses on a muddy floor in a house which had no electricity that night. So we felt homesick, also went into panic mode when I thought, how am I going to charge my phone for the next 3 months, and how am I going to use my laptop? Thankfully it was a power cut, which is a regular occurrence out in E10, the town we stay in. As you can see, basic surroundings, lots of beans and pasta, which shows the extent of our cooking skills back then, and not much has changed now either. And the toilet process also took a lot of getting used to as well. This store here, called the London Marathon Store in E10 in Kenya, you would guess it would sell running clothes, running kit, entry forms for the London Marathon, when in actual fact all it sells are things like bread and eggs and sweeties. But the point in this story is that this shop is about 5 minutes away from the home of this lady, Mary Kitani. Now this picture was taken 11 years ago after Mary's first race, which was the Shoe for Africa 10K in E10. Now Mary finished 21st that day, and she said to the organiser, Toby Tanzer, afterwards, that she would never finish outside the podium places again. Now true to her word, Mary Kitani has now gone on to win the London Marathon twice, the New York Marathon 3 times, and become the second fastest female marathon runner ever over the marathon distance. None of this would have been possible had it not been for her hard work and sacrifice as an athlete. And it's amazing to see the difference, the change this has had in Mary's life, her family, and also the community around her. And it really shows the power of sport and how it can change lives. I went back to Kenya in 2012 and was able to train a little bit more. Unfortunately, I was injured on the first trip. The things I've learned most from Kenyan athletes are just the sheer work ethic that they've got. I thought I trained hard before going to Kenya, and I was training maybe 5 or 6 times a week. But going there, realizing that these guys train 2 or 3 times a day just shows how they do become so successful. And the track that we're running on there is the main running track in E10. So this is the track which has produced multiple world and Olympic champions and world record holders as well. And it just goes to show that you don't always need the best facilities in order to become successful. On that trip, I spent a lot of time with Gideon Gathimba, one of the Kenyan athletes who had raced in Aberdeen back in 2009. And not only was it amazing to train alongside a world-class athlete, but it was incredible to see a different side of Kenya, visiting many friends and family of Gideon and the community around him. One of these experiences, which really touched my heart and set me on a life path that I'd never imagined possible, was a visit to the Pavilion Village Children's Home in Karatina. Now at that point there was 22 children in the home. A lot of them had lost their parents due to HIV. They were all out of school due to a lack of fees. They were short on food. The windows were broken, as you can see in the photo there. And we were really struck, as we were shown around the home, the kids were so happy and so proud of their surroundings, despite, as we saw it, being quite tough. The bedroom on the left and their kitchen on the right. When I got home to the UK, I posted this picture on my Facebook page and said to my friends that I would like to try and raise enough to get a mattress for each of the children for that Christmas. So the target was 22 mattresses at £22 each, and we wanted to try and raise £484. And amazingly, over the next couple of days, we raised almost 3 times that amount, and we were able to get the mattresses delivered in a typical Kenyan style delivery. And with that's nothing compared to some of the things you see cows on the back of motorbikes and cupboards as well. But with the extra money, we were able to get some of the children back into school and eating regular meals as well. And so Gideon and I spoke a lot about what we wanted to do for children in Kenya and how we felt like we could do so much more. And with this in mind, we set up the Gathimba Edwards Foundation. Now, many athletes come to Kenya and train in E10 and make huge amounts of money from their success as athletes. But every day, they run past children who are out of school, sleeping on mud floors, and they do nothing. But it was clear to me from those experiences with Gideon that this man was different. And despite being a former world record holder, he had a huge passion for helping disadvantaged children, and he could relate to their struggles as he had a very tough upbringing himself as well. But it also showed the power of sport, and how, had neither of us followed our talents as athletes, I may never have gone to Kenya, we may never have met, and the fundraising may never have taken place. And so we set up the foundation, which now supports 243 children across different parts of Kenya. And we've been able to build 17 houses for 73 children. Now, when I think back to trying to raise money for 22 mattresses, it just really shows you what can be achieved when you follow what you're passionate about. It's been amazing for us to see what some of these children, now young adults like Peter and Elliot, who are studying at university and college in Nairobi, and Caroline, who's graduated as a teacher, have gone on to achieve. They would have been achieving these things anyway had it not been for just a relatively small amount of money. And so it's so inspiring for us and our younger children to see them realizing their dreams now. These are 4 lessons which I've learned from families that we work with in Kenya. Firstly, appreciating what you have. Secondly, staying positive. Thirdly, complaining less and smiling more. And finally, never giving up, because situations can change. The first lesson. This house on the left is where the older children at the Pavilion Village were sleeping when we first visited. And as you can see from the picture on the right, there's holes in the roof and holes in the walls. So when it rains and they're sleeping, the rain was coming through. Our volunteers were able to build this 16-bed dormitory for the children with a living room and study area. One of the most amazing things I've seen during my time in Kenya was when we installed the washing machine. The children sat in front of it for 30 minutes as if it was a television. Now, I'm not saying to you to go home and stare at your washing machine for 30 minutes, but it does make you realise how important it is to appreciate what you have and take things for granted just that little bit less. Secondly, this family, the girl at the top left, is a girl called Zeddy. Now, she lived in this single-room mud house with her 8 brothers and sisters, sleeping on a mud floor and eating their dinner with no furniture. Our volunteers were able to build the house for them on the right. And as part of a fundraiser, I went and spent a night on the mud floor with my colleague David. At first, I tried to sleep on my left side. It became too sore. Moved over to the right, it became too sore. And so I spent 8 hours staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep, and in a room filled with smoke because of the charcoal they use for cooking. And it was tough, but it was one night, and these children were sleeping like that every night of their lives, and it really made me realise how tough it was to be a child in Kenya, and it made us even more determined to try and change that. The lesson I've learned from them is these pictures you would guess were maybe taken after the house was built, but each and every one of these pictures was taken before their house was built, and it shows how important it is to stay positive despite the struggles that you're facing. This man, Daniel, sadly lost his wife and now looks after their 5 children single-handedly. And despite his struggles, he never complains and is always smiling. As you can see from the picture on the left, he has a broken left arm. 6 years ago, he fell off a tree and broke both his arms and was only able to afford the operation to fix one of them. And so for the past 6 years, he's lived with a broken arm, working full-time to support his family and never complains. And so I'm delighted to say that Daniel will be getting his second arm operated in a couple of weeks' time, and it will be incredible to see what he can achieve. The final lesson, showing that situations can change. The 2 boys at the top left are Oscar and Stanley, who were living in this house with their mum Mary and their brother Paul, and they were so short on food that they were eating the soil of their house to get iron into their diet. An amazing friend of mine, Alan Brown, after visiting the family, donated the £2,000 which we needed to build them a new house. And so as you can see from the bottom left picture, they're living happily in their new home, and it was named Archie's House after Alan's family dog, who sadly passed away at the time of the building. During their struggles, Mary, their mum, her neighbour, often mocked them for the struggles that they were in and did nothing to support them. And so it was amazing for us to see over 150 people turn up to the official house opening ceremony. And I've never seen Mary smile like that before. And so the lesson here is that situations can change, but also it's great to see that it's Mary laughing now and not her neighbour. All of these experiences have motivated me a huge amount, but I've also been motivated by a number of people too. None more so than my friend Neil Jaffrey, who was sadly killed in a road accident in 2014. Neil was a huge supporter of me as an athlete and of the foundation as well. And I often, when I wake up each morning, I think, what would Neil want me to do now? You know, would he want me to sleep in? No. If I'm out on a run, would he want me to slow down? No. He would want me to go for it. And so that's a big motivator to me in work and in sport, and also making sure that his 3 little girls are okay and achieve their dreams in life is a big motivator too. And it was amazing this morning to see Jessica in the middle there, so excited on at her 5th birthday party. All these experiences have also inspired me on the track too. And going into the Scottish Championships in 2015, I was by no means the favourite. I hadn't had a great season. The night before the race, my dad said to me, when you get into that home straight, tell yourself that nobody has more guts and determination than you. Now, it doesn't matter if that's true, but the most important thing is what you believe. And those words were ringing in my ears as I came into the home straight, and I worked harder than ever to get to the finish line first. Crossing the line as Scottish champion was one of the best moments of my life and something that I'll never forget, and it simply wouldn't have been possible had I not followed my dreams in going to Kenya in the first place. Unfortunately, this has been my life since. So for the last 18 months, I've had a series of injuries and underwent knee surgery in June of last year. And it has been frustrating, but bad things happen to everyone, and the most important thing is how you deal with them. It can be frustrating seeing people that you've raced against achieving things that you feel like you could achieve as well, but it's so important to stay positive and use that as a motivation to get back and achieve what you believe you can. Being out injured taught me how precious time is. You know, time can be a funny thing. In training sessions before the injury, I would often be wishing time away. If I had 15 minutes left to go on a run, I'd be dreading it and wishing I only had 5. Now, when I'm on the gym bike, and I hate the gym bike, when I'm on the gym bike and I see 2 minutes to go, I want more, I want 5 minutes. And you know, it just shows you that negative things can be turned into positives too. I think this is a really important question to ask yourself on a regular basis. What is your why? So basically, what is your biggest motivator? What gets you out of bed every morning? For me, it's about working hard to make the people who have supported me proud and doing what I can to support them. And that can be transferred into anything that you do in life. Sport was my vehicle, but whatever your interests, if you follow what you're passionate about, it can become a career. I want to finish off by telling you this story of a little girl called Faith Wanjiku. who I first met with our volunteers in October 2015 as we visited her school. There were about 500 children all lined up, shaking our hands and high-fiving us. And as Faith went past, I realised that she didn't have any hands. And so when the volunteers went back to the house building sites, I went into the classroom to see how Faith was functioning in a mainstream school. And despite having no hands and also no feet, which you would never have known as she sprinted about the classroom, she was position 5 out of 52 in her class and had incredibly neat handwriting. After visiting the school, we went to see Faith's house, and as you can see, her mum and Faith shared this bedroom, which also had a wheelbarrow in the room and gaps in the walls. Thanks to people that have supported us, we were able to build Faith a new house, and during the building project, Faith and her mum, each night, despite the builders telling them otherwise, would walk up and down this slippery, muddy path, filling up water cans, Faith with her little yellow jerry can, and her mum with 18 litres of water on her back. And Faith's mum also has no hands and feet due to a genetic condition. But they wanted to do that to fill up the water tank which the builders required to be filled, just as a token of their appreciation to thank the builders for what they were doing for them. It's amazing to see what Faith and her mum achieve. Faith draws the most lovely pictures, her mum chops wood, opens padlocks, cooks meals, carries water, and throughout all of this, they never stop smiling. And so what Faith and her mum have taught me is that if anyone ever tells you in life that you're not capable of doing something, whether it's because of age, gender, ability, or even injury, think of Faith and prove them wrong. This is a quote from Nelson Mandela, which has inspired me a lot over the years. But if there's one thing I'd like you to take from today, it's this: make a difference wherever, however, and whenever you can, because you may never get that chance again, and you never know where it can take someone else or yourself. Run towards your dreams, and remember, if your work inspires others, then it's got no finish line. Thank you.